6 a.m. Handcuffs snap on my wrists in my own driveway. 3 wannabe cops in cheap polyester uniforms shove me against my truck, yelling, "Hand over the keys. This house is HOA property now. You owe $47,000. I paid cash for this place. No HOA ever existed. The leader flashes a laminated badge that looks like it was printed at Kinko's, reeking of stale coffee and desperation. His backup officers are wearing clip-on ties and shoes that squeak like dog toys. They think they're robbing an easy mark. Some suburban dad who'll cave under pressure. They have no clue they just picked the wrong guy to mess with. One wrong move, and their fake badges just became the biggest mistake of their pathetic criminal lives. What would you do if fake cops tried to steal your home? Drop it in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Now let me take you back 6 months to how this nightmare began. 6 months earlier, I thought I'd found paradise. Agent Ethan Delacroix, 15 years with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, just transferred from the chaos of downtown Denver to this quiet suburban field office. My wife Sarah, an ER nurse who'd seen enough urban trauma for one lifetime, was practically dancing when we found our dream house. 1247 Elm Street in Willowbrook Estates. Brand new construction. 127 homes total, marketed as luxury community with old-fashioned values. The smell of fresh pine floors and paint fumes still hung in the air during our walkthrough. But here's what sold us. Absolutely no HOA mentioned anywhere in the closing documents. After years of apartment living, the idea of no monthly fees, no busybody neighbors dictating our mailbox color, that was pure freedom. We paid cash. Liquidated my grandmother's farm inheritance, every penny of it, because we wanted to own this place free and clear. No mortgage, no monthly payments, just our house on our land. The first 2 days felt like we'd escaped to some perfect suburban bubble. Kids' laughter echoed off the new construction walls as our 8-year-old twins, Emma and Sophie, claimed their bedrooms. Saturday morning lawnmowers hummed in that peaceful suburban rhythm. Our neighbor Dolores, a retired teacher with flour permanently under her fingernails, brought homemade cookies. Bill from across the street, Vietnam vet with a neat gray beard, helped us unload the moving truck without being asked. Then day 3 shattered the illusion. I'm unpacking boxes in the garage when I hear heels clicking deliberately slow on my concrete walkway. Measured, territorial, the sound a predator makes when it's claiming new territory. Enter Priscilla Blackthorne, late 40s, driving a white BMW X7 that screams, "I own this place." Always carrying this leather portfolio like she's running a Fortune 500 company instead of what I'm about to discover is a criminal operation. Her manicured nails tap impatiently against her phone case, a nervous habit that tells me she's used to getting her way through fear. "Welcome to Willowbrook," she says, but her smile is pure ice. "I'm the Community Standards Coordinator. We need to discuss your compliance obligations." She hands me this thick packet, 47 pages of community guidelines that read like a dictator's wet dream. Monthly HOA dues of $890, plus a $2,300 new resident fee due immediately. "I think there's been a mistake," I tell her politely. "No HOA was mentioned in my purchase documents." Her smile turns predatory. "Documents can be updated, especially for federal employees who might not understand how real communities operate. We know exactly who you are, Agent Delacroix, and we know how to handle your type." That last part hits like ice water. She'd done homework. Deep homework. This wasn't some random welcome wagon. This was a targeted operation. She leaves behind a business card. Blackthorne Community Management, LLC. The paper stock is expensive, but something about the whole presentation feels off. Like a really good counterfeit that fools most people but not someone trained to spot fraud. That evening, Dolores stops by with more cookies and a whispered confession that makes my blood run cold. "She's been targeting families systematically," the old teacher says, glancing around like Priscilla might be listening from the bushes. "The Johnsons paid $12,000 in fines before they broke. The Martinezes lost their house entirely. Foreclosure over HOA debt that appeared overnight." Bill shows me a stack of citations, $7,800 for excessive patriotic displays. His crime? A small American flag in his front yard. I'm staring at a pattern that screams organized crime. The expensive car, the fake authority, the systematic targeting, the financial devastation. This isn't some petty neighborhood power trip. This is a full-scale fraud operation, and I just moved into ground zero. What I didn't know yet? Priscilla had been perfecting this scam for years, and she'd never encountered anyone who could fight back. Week 2 brought the first wave of official-looking harassment. I found 3 violation notices taped to my front door, each one more ridiculous than the last. Unauthorized vehicle storage for parking my FBI-issued sedan in my own driveway. Non-compliant mailbox height. Apparently I was 2 inches off some imaginary standard. My personal favorite, unapproved exterior color variance, because my beige house was somehow the wrong shade of beige. Each citation threatened $500 daily fines, compounding until resolved. The documents looked legitimate at first glance, official letterhead reading, Willowbrook HOA Enforcement Division, case numbers, even fake legal disclaimers in tiny print. But the paper felt wrong in my hands, too glossy, too perfect, like someone had spent serious money making counterfeits that would fool most people, but not someone trained to spot document fraud. During my lunch break, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to run Blackthorn Community Management through the FBI databases. 15 years investigating white-collar crime teaches you to follow your instincts when something smells fishy. What I found made my blood run cold. The company didn't exist until 1 week after I moved in. Priscilla had filed incorporation papers the day after our first meeting, listing herself as legal agent and chief compliance officer. More disturbing, she had no law degree, no business license, no legitimate authority whatsoever. I remembered from my training that in Colorado, HOAs can only be established with consent from actual property owners, not fake shell companies. Creating an HOA using fraudulent ownership records? That's wire fraud, a federal crime with up to 20 years in prison. But the real smoking gun came from the property records. Randolph Blackthorn, Priscilla's husband and local developer, still owned 23 lots that were supposedly sold to establish the HOA voting majority. Fake sales to fake buyers, all designed to create the illusion of community support for their bogus HOA. I had them, but I needed more evidence to make federal charges stick. Time to play the confused, compliant homeowner while I gathered ammunition. I called the number on her business card, making sure to record the conversation. Perfectly legal in Colorado since I was a party to the call. Mrs. Blackthorn, this is Ethan Delacroix. I got your citations, and I just want to follow the rules. Can you help me understand the process? Her voice turned syrupy sweet when she thought I was surrendering. Of course, Agent Delacroix. I'm so glad you're ready to cooperate with community standards. Then Priscilla made the mistake that would eventually put her in federal prison. She explained her entire criminal operation in detail, thinking she was educating a compliant victim. You see, we've perfected a system here in Willowbrook, the monthly dues fund, essential community improvements, my salary for managing compliance, security services provided by my husband's construction team, and various infrastructure upgrades. By infrastructure upgrades, she meant her pool renovation. By security services, she meant intimidation. The recording got even better. Previous problem families learned quickly that cooperation leads to peaceful community living, while resistance leads to escalating consequences. We have enforcement officers who ensure compliance, and we work closely with local authorities to address violations. I'm sitting in my car outside Starbucks, steam from my coffee fogging the windows, as I listen to this woman casually describe extortion like she's discussing weekend gardening plans. The sound of her voice on playback, that syrupy tone turning sharp and threatening when she mentioned escalating consequences, told me everything I needed to know about her methods. Over the next few days, I started casual conversations with neighbors during evening walks. The picture that emerged made my stomach turn. Dolores had paid $4,200 in fines for flower garden violations. Her crime? Planting roses instead of approved community shrubs. The smell of her evening jasmine reminded me of my grandmother's garden, the same grandmother whose inheritance had bought my freedom from exactly this kind of tyranny. Bill showed me his stack of citations, $7,800 for excessive patriotic displays and unauthorized fence materials. His fence was identical to every other house on the block. 27 years in the Army, he said, his weathered hands shaking with anger. I didn't fight for freedom overseas to lose it in my own neighborhood. Jenny and Tom, the young couple with a toddler, were considering bankruptcy. They'd received citations for everything from improper child toy storage to non-regulation outdoor furniture. Their HOA-related debt had ballooned to $15,000 in just 4 months. "She told us we'd lose the house if we didn't pay," Jenny whispered, bouncing her baby nervously. The sound of the child's innocent laughter mixed with her mother's fear created a gut-wrenching contrast. "But we used our savings for the down payment. There's nothing left." And the pattern was crystal clear. Priscilla targeted new families, elderly residents, and anyone she perceived as vulnerable. Young parents terrified of losing their homes, retirees on fixed incomes, people without resources to fight back. Then came the escalation I'd been dreading. A certified letter demanding $12,000 in accumulated fines plus legal processing fees. Deadline: 72 hours, or enforcement action will be taken against the property. The letter was copied to my mortgage company, except I didn't have a mortgage. Someone was trying to trigger foreclosure proceedings on a house I owned free and clear. That's when the full scope hit me. Priscilla wasn't just running a scam. She was running a systematic operation to steal people's homes, one fraudulent citation at a time. The fake liens appeared overnight like a plague, spreading through our property records. I discovered mine during a routine credit check, a $32,000 lien filed against my house for emergency HOA assessments and accumulated violations. The paperwork looked official: notarized documents, legal case numbers, even a convincing court stamp. But my fraud training caught what most homeowners would miss. The notary seal belonged to Margaret Lucy, who'd been dead for 2 years according to state records. Priscilla had literally used a corpse's credentials to steal our homes. The real devastation hit our neighbors harder. Jenny and Tom's refinance application got rejected when the lender discovered a $47,000 lien against their property. They needed that money to cover medical bills from Tom's recent surgery. Now they couldn't touch their own equity. "We're trapped," Jenny whispered during another late-night call. "The bank says we can't do anything until this fake debt disappears." Meanwhile, Priscilla's harassment campaign went full surveillance state. Her enforcement officers patrolled our streets in an unmarked pickup truck, photographing houses and measuring property lines with what looked like deliberately altered rulers. The truck's diesel exhaust became the smell of intimidation in our neighborhood. Then came the fake emergency community meetings, where only Priscilla's allies attended. People who didn't even live in our subdivision but somehow had voting rights. Posted meeting minutes claimed Ethan Delacroix was voted out of compliance by unanimous decision of residents who'd never met me. But the real shock came at 3 a.m. when my motion sensors triggered. Through my bedroom window, Priscilla's white BMW sat on the street like a stalking predator, engine running, flashlight beams sweeping my house methodically. I grabbed my phone and started recording. Watching her measure my mailbox with a ruler, then slip a fresh citation under my doormat, was surreal enough. But the audio captured something explosive, her phone conversation in the suburban silence. "We need to accelerate the timeline," she whispered urgently. "He's not breaking like the others. The federal agent thing makes him dangerous if he starts digging into our business model." Business model. That phrase told me everything. This wasn't neighborhood drama. This was organized crime with a corporate structure. The next morning brought my counterintelligence breakthrough. I created a fake email account and joined the neighborhood Facebook group as Concerned Resident Mike Johnson. What I found there was a digital smoking gun that would make prosecutors weep with joy. Priscilla was actively recruiting enforcement committee members through private messages. "We need neighbors who understand that certain government employees bring federal scrutiny to family communities." Another message was even more damning. "Some residents don't share traditional suburban values and require enhanced management protocols." She was building a discrimination case in real time, documenting her targeting of federal employees and anyone she deemed outside community standards. Every screenshot was potential evidence in a civil rights violation case. But here's where her arrogance destroyed her. The Facebook group revealed she'd been running identical scams in 3 other Colorado subdivisions simultaneously. Different LLC names, same fraudulent lien strategy, same fake enforcement officers. This wasn't some amateur neighborhood power trip. This was a professional criminal enterprise. I forwarded everything to my FBI contacts for forensic analysis. The lien documents contained forged notary seals from 4 different dead people, fraudulent signatures that handwriting experts would demolish in court, and fabricated legal case numbers that didn't exist in any Colorado database. Time for community resistance. Sarah and I hosted a neighborhood barbecue that weekend, inviting every affected family. The response was overwhelming. People were desperate for leadership, but terrified of retaliation. Dolores brought apple pie and 40 years of grassroots organizing experience. "I've seen bullies before," she said, slicing pie while cicadas provided nature's soundtrack to our rebellion. "But never ones with systematic legal fraud." Bill spread out a hand-drawn neighborhood map on our picnic table, his military training evident in every tactical detail. "We document everything: times, dates, license plates, witness statements, build evidence they can't destroy or deny." And Tom contributed engineering precision, showing us how Priscilla's crew used deliberately miscalibrated measuring tools to create artificial violations. "Same mailbox, 3 different measurements," he proved with photographs. "They're manufacturing evidence." The community solidarity was beautiful, but Priscilla noticed our organizing. Her response was swift and terrifying. Randolph appeared at my front door with 2 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a mob movie, motor oil stains on their clothes, cigarette breath, and the kind of dead eyes that come from years of intimidating innocent people. "Nice family you got there, Agent," Randolph said, his cheap cologne failing to mask the stench of pure menace. "Shame if community problems started following them to work, to school, to the grocery store." I recognized federal intimidation tactics when I saw them. This wasn't an idle threat. It was a promise of systematic harassment designed to drive federal law enforcement out of their hunting ground. But they'd just made a fatal mistake. Threatening a federal agent's family triggers automatic FBI protection protocols and transforms petty fraud into serious federal crimes with mandatory minimum sentences. Their countdown to federal prison had officially started ticking. Priscilla's desperation pushed her into pure criminality. Her crew started targeting utilities, the basic services that make homes livable. They showed up at Dolores's house in fake city worker uniforms, claiming HOA utility violations required immediate water and electricity shutoffs. Watching 3 grown men terrorize a 70-year-old woman with fake clipboards made my hands shake with rage. Their laminated city worker IDs looked like they'd been made at a mall kiosk. Peeling edges, blurry photos, the works. But Dolores didn't know that as she stood trembling in her doorway. "Ma'am, you're in violation of community utility standards," the lead fake inspector announced, his clipboard trembling slightly in what I recognized as criminal nervousness. "We're authorized to disconnect services pending compliance resolution." The smell of Dolores's morning coffee mixed with her tears as these bastards threatened to leave an elderly woman without running water or electricity. I was about to intervene when Priscilla made the mistake that would trigger automatic federal jurisdiction. Her crew decided to upgrade their performance by impersonating federal postal inspectors. "Sir, your mail delivery violates community postal regulations," one of them announced at my mailbox, wearing what looked like a Halloween costume version of a postal uniform. They photographed my federal correspondence, handled official FBI mail, and threatened to report violations to federal authorities. I almost burst out laughing. These morons were committing federal crimes while trying to intimidate the federal agent who'd soon arrest them. Impersonating postal inspectors carries no statute of limitations. They just bought themselves lifetime tickets to federal prison. While her ground crew committed felonies in broad daylight, I was building the financial case that would destroy their entire operation. My FBI database access revealed a money trail that would make organized crime bosses jealous. $230,000 in HOA dues had flowed through 3 shell companies directly into Priscilla's personal accounts over 18 months. But the spending pattern revealed pure criminal greed. $89,000 for European vacations charged as community liaison travel, $43,000 for luxury car leases under fake business accounts, $15,000 in Vegas casino losses listed as enforcement training seminars. Randolph's construction company was running a perfect double billing scam. The HOA paid for community improvements that the city had already funded through municipal bonds. Street lighting, sidewalk repairs, playground equipment, everything paid for twice, with HOA money flowing straight into Blackthorn pockets. But then I discovered the master plan that made my blood run cold. Property records revealed Randolph's endgame: foreclose on homes through fake HOA debt, buy them at sheriff sales for pennies on the dollar, then flip them to hand-picked buyers who'd vote for expanded HOA powers. An infinite criminal cycle that could steal entire neighborhoods systematically. Our resistance network had evolved into a sophisticated surveillance operation. Bill's veteran friends positioned themselves as concerned neighbors during every harassment visit. Dolores organized gardening club meetings that coincidentally occurred during enforcement activities. Every smartphone became an evidence-gathering weapon, but the psychological pressure was breaking people. Jenny and Tom started packing boxes, surrendering to fake foreclosure notices claiming they had 30 days to vacate. The sound of packing tape and smell of cardboard became the neighborhood's soundtrack of defeat. "We can't fight anymore," Tom said, his engineering precision now applied to organizing their life into boxes. "The legal costs would destroy us even if we won." That's when I realized why Priscilla was accelerating everything. County records showed Randolph's construction loan entering default. The bank wanted immediate payment, and the only cash source was stealing homes faster. My house appeared on real estate websites without permission. Motivated seller. Federal agent relocating immediately. Multiple agents called asking about my urgent sale at below-market prices. Every fraudulent listing was another federal wire fraud charge across state lines. The harassment escalated to pure terrorism. Slashed tires, spray-painted threats on garage doors, comply or move, dead fish rotting in mailboxes with notes about permanent consequences for violation. The neighborhood reeked of fear and decay, but I needed one final piece of evidence. I called Priscilla wearing a wire, playing the desperate homeowner begging for mercy. "Please, I'll borrow money from family to pay the fines," I pleaded, letting desperation leak into my voice. "I just need time." Her recorded laughter revealed everything. "Agent Delacroix, you government types never learn. This is our community, our rules. Pay and stay quiet, or lose everything and move somewhere more appropriate for federal employees." That confession would play beautifully in federal court. As I hung up, computer surveillance revealed Priscilla's final, desperate move. Online searches for fleeing prosecution, non-extradition countries, and emergency international travel. Bank records showed large cash withdrawals and foreign currency exchanges. She was planning to run with our money, leaving destroyed families and stolen homes behind. But she'd made one fatal miscalculation. You can't outrun federal charges when the FBI agent you're trying to rob has been building your case for months. Time to spring the trap that would end her criminal empire forever. Everything changed with a single phone call that shattered Priscilla's entire criminal empire. "Agent Delacroix, this is Sandra from Mountain View Title. I have a really strange question about your deed," she said, her voice carrying that careful tone people use when they've discovered something that doesn't add up. Someone had requested copies of all HOA documents associated with my property for a routine compliance audit. Standard procedure, except Sandra had found something that made her do a double take. "Here's the weird part," she continued, and I could hear papers rustling frantically. "Your subdivision was specifically designed to prohibit HOAs. I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never seen anything like it." The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on my kitchen floor as the implications hit me like a freight train. I drove to Sandra's office that afternoon, my hands actually trembling as she spread the original documents across her conference table. The legal language jumped off the page like a neon sign. No homeowners association, property owners association, or similar governing body shall ever be established within this subdivision without written unanimous consent from 100% of all property owners. This anti-HOA covenant was recorded in 2019, Sandra explained, her highlighter tracing the bombshell clause. Randolph's father specifically designed this subdivision to attract buyers who wanted freedom from HOA tyranny. It's legally bulletproof. The smell of old paper and legal toner filled the small conference room as the full scope of Priscilla's catastrophic mistake became crystal clear. She'd never bothered to research the original subdivision documents before launching her criminal enterprise. Every single thing she'd done, every fine, every lien, every threat, was not just fraud. It was legally impossible from day one. I remembered my white-collar crime training. Covenants that run with the land are sacred in property law. You can't overturn them with fake votes or fraudulent corporations. Attempting to enforce a prohibited HOA constitutes criminal extortion under federal statutes, with each violation carrying up to 20 years in prison. But the financial evidence was even more damning. My FBI subpoenas had revealed the true scale of their theft. $347,000 stolen from 23 families through systematic fraud. Priscilla's European vacation, Randolph's luxury vehicles, their pool renovation, all funded by money stolen from neighbors who'd bought homes specifically to escape HOA control. The federal charges were multiplying like bacteria. Wire fraud for electronic transfers, mail fraud for USPS threats, impersonation of federal officials, and now RICO conspiracy for organized criminal enterprise. With the anti-HOA covenant as evidence, their entire operation collapsed into a house of cards. I spread the covenant documents across my kitchen table that evening, the late sunlight streaming through windows as I absorbed the magnitude of this discovery. The sweet scent of Sarah's dinner cooking mixed with the metallic taste of pure satisfaction. I had them completely, utterly, irreversibly destroyed. But staring at those legal pages, I faced the hardest decision of my career. I could arrest them immediately and end our neighborhood's suffering tonight. Or I could let them continue their criminal spree while building an absolutely airtight federal case that would put them away for decades and prevent them from ever running this scam again. The risk was allowing more families to endure harassment and financial theft. The benefit was ensuring these predators would spend the rest of their productive lives in federal prison instead of getting slap-on-the-wrist plea deals. 3 families had already fled. 12 more were facing financial ruin. How many more would suffer while I built the perfect case? I picked up my phone to call an emergency neighborhood meeting. Time to brief my neighbors on what I'd discovered and let them help decide how to spring the trap that would destroy Priscilla's criminal empire forever. The endgame was finally here. Saturday evening, my backyard transformed into mission control for the most satisfying takedown of my career. 23 neighbors gathered around picnic tables laden with Dolores's homemade cookies and Bill's military-grade coffee, while citronella candles flickered against approaching dusk. The sweet scent of evening jasmine mixed with the metallic tension of people planning to destroy their oppressors. I spread the anti-HOA covenant documents across the table like battle plans, the legal text glowing under our patio lights. Here's what we know, I began, channeling 15 years of federal case building. Priscilla's entire operation is legally impossible. Every fine, every lien, every threat constitutes federal extortion under RICO statutes. The relief was palpable, but I held up my hand before celebration could begin. Question is, arrest them now for 5 to 8 years, or let them hang themselves completely for 15 to 25 under organized crime charges? Bill leaned forward, his weathered hands studying the documents like artillery coordinates. What triggers the bigger charges? She's planning a public foreclosure auction of my house. Next Friday, courthouse steps, with media advertising to attract out-of-state bidders. I pulled out screenshots of her Facebook event promotion. That's federal conspiracy to defraud across state lines, plus impersonation of court-authorized auctioneers on government property. Here's something most people don't know. Anyone attempting to auction property they don't legally own at a courthouse commits automatic federal fraud, especially when advertising online to attract interstate bidders. The courthouse location makes it federal jurisdiction, and internet promotion triggers wire fraud statutes with no statute of limitations. Tom's engineering brain immediately grasped the technical beauty, so she has to physically show up and claim authority she doesn't have in front of witnesses on federal property? Exactly, and we're going to document every second of it. Our surveillance network kicked into high gear with military precision. Bill sketched positions on napkins, drawing from decades of tactical planning. We need 3-angle video coverage, backup audio systems, and encrypted communication between all observers. I taught them smartphone evidence techniques that would hold up in federal court. Airplane mode first, then record. Prevents interruption calls. GPS metadata must be enabled for location verification. Film continuously, never stop and restart. Creates suspicious gaps in timeline. The technical setup was crucial. We'd use multiple backup systems, dedicated camera operators, smartphone recordings from different angles, and hidden audio devices that I'd legally obtained through FBI equipment loans. Each recording device would be synchronized using atomic clock apps to prevent defense lawyers from claiming edited footage. Dolores organized her concerned citizen observation group, but with specific intelligence roles. Mrs. Patterson handles media coordination. Her daughter at Channel 7 is standing by. Jenny manages social media documentation with real-time Twitter updates. Tom operates backup recording equipment using his engineering precision. The financial recovery strategy was equally detailed. Federal asset forfeiture laws allow victims to recover stolen money directly from criminal proceeds. Priscilla's vacation properties, luxury vehicles, and jewelry collection Everything purchased with fake HOA dues would be seized and auctioned to compensate neighbors. Simple takeaway: when criminals buy assets with stolen money, federal law lets victims claim those assets directly, often recovering more than they lost due to asset appreciation. Meanwhile, I perfected my desperate homeowner performance. I called Priscilla wearing a wire, practically begging for mercy. "I'll mortgage my grandmother's jewelry if necessary. Please don't auction my house." Her recorded response sealed her fate. Agent Delacroix, federal employees need to learn proper community respect. Your house will be sold to buyers who understand traditional neighborhood values. That confession contained 3 federal crimes: extortion, discrimination against federal employees, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Each charge carried minimum 5-year sentences. The media coordination was surgical. Reporter Maria Sanchez positioned cameras at strategic courthouse angles. Social media accounts prepared to amplify the story with hashtag fake HOA busted, hashtag trending nationally. Live streaming would create real-time evidence impossible for defense attorneys to challenge. But the most satisfying element was our community's transformation. Bill taught surveillance techniques learned from decades of military intelligence. Dolores applied 40 years of grassroots organizing to coordinate witness testimonies. Even the kids contributed. Emma and Sophie designed flyers exposing the scam for broader neighborhood awareness. "Here's the technical detail that destroys her," I explained, pulling out property ownership maps. "Colorado law requires auctioneer licenses for any sale over $5,000. Priscilla has no license, no legal authority, and no actual property ownership. She's committing at least 7 separate federal crimes simultaneously." As our war council concluded, the sound of crickets mixing with distant traffic created an oddly peaceful backdrop for planning the destruction of a criminal empire. The smell of citronella candles and blooming roses reminded me why we were fighting, to protect the simple suburban peace these criminals had shattered. "When this goes down," I warned as people gathered their evidence packets, "expect federal arrest teams, media chaos, and probably some desperate behavior from Priscilla. Keep kids inside that morning and have emergency contacts ready." Bill stood up, extending his hand for the kind of firm handshake that seals military operations. 27 years defending freedom overseas. Now we're doing it in our own backyard. 7 days until Priscilla's greed would detonate her entire criminal operation. The countdown to federal justice had officially begun. Priscilla's desperation turned deadly the moment she discovered our neighborhood resistance network. Someone had exposed our organizing, probably through that fake Facebook account she'd been monitoring, and her retaliation was swift, vicious, and completely unhinged. I woke Tuesday morning to find my truck's tires slashed in perfect X patterns, the hissing sound of escaping air mixing with my growing rage. Spray painted across my garage door in dripping red letters: "Comply or move, final warning." The paint was still wet, chemical fumes burning my nostrils as I stood there in my bathrobe realizing she'd escalated to direct threats. But that was just the opening act. Dead fish appeared in mailboxes throughout the neighborhood like some demented calling card, their rotting stench carrying handwritten notes. Community standards violations have permanent consequences. Dolores found a particularly grotesque salmon decomposing in her mailbox, the oily smell making her retch as she discovered a note threatening escalating enforcement measures against federal conspirators. This wasn't strategic harassment anymore. This was pure criminal panic. Then Randolph showed up at my door with a metal briefcase, sweating through his cheap cologne like a discount movie villain. Inside, $50,000 in crisp hundreds, arranged like some FBI training exercise in corruption. "Take it, agent," he said, his voice shaking with desperation. "Move your family somewhere safer. Forget about neighborhood problems that don't concern federal law enforcement." I was recording everything, naturally. "What exactly are you asking me to forget?" "The community compliance issues, the HOA management disputes. Maybe some families got confused about proper procedures, but that's not worth destroying good people over." That recorded confession contained enough federal bribery charges to guarantee him a decade in prison. But Priscilla's next move crossed every line into dangerous territory. She hired a private investigator to stalk my family, and not just casual surveillance. This creep followed Sarah to work, photographed our daughters at school, documented our routines like he was planning a kidnapping. The beige Honda became a constant presence, always 2 cars behind Sarah's commute, always parked across from Emma and Sophie's playground. When he followed Sarah across state lines to her medical conference in Wyoming, he triggered federal stalking statutes with mandatory minimum sentences. But here's what made my blood freeze. Surveillance photos showed him studying our twins' school schedule, timing their arrival and departure patterns. I identified his vehicle through license plates, traced his employer through PI licensing records, and discovered payments coming directly from Priscilla's personal account. But the real shock came when I found his background: 3 arrests for stalking, 2 restraining orders, and a history of targeting federal employees' families. Priscilla hadn't just hired surveillance, she'd hired a predator with a specific expertise in terrorizing law enforcement families. Meanwhile, her public smear campaign revealed both her desperation and her prejudice. Anonymous flyers appeared on doorsteps. Protect your children. Federal agent using government resources against neighbors. But the language got darker. Subtle references to outside agitators, government spies, and threats to traditional family values. Social media attacks escalated with fake complaints to Sarah's hospital about security risks from federal employees' families. The whispered conversations stopping when I appeared told me some neighbors were buying into her propaganda. But then Priscilla made the mistake that would destroy her completely. She staged an elaborate false flag operation, breaking into her own home and filing police reports claiming I'd retaliated against her legitimate community work. The fresh pry marks on her door still smelled of the paint she'd used to fake them. She planted a threatening note with my name forged at the bottom, except her own fingerprints were the only ones found on it. Here's the mini twist that shattered her entire defense. Security footage from 3 neighboring houses showed her staging the entire break-in herself. But more damaging, the footage captured her practicing the performance twice before filing the police report, revealing premeditated fraud designed to frame a federal agent. Filing false reports to frame federal agents carries 20-year sentences under anti-terrorism statutes. Priscilla had just graduated from petty fraud to federal terrorism charges. As this chaos erupted, our community response revealed the power of organized resistance. Bill's veteran network started protective patrols around vulnerable neighbors. Dolores organized safety buddy systems for elderly residents. Jenny and Tom created encrypted group chats for real-time threat reporting. But the most telling detail came from bank surveillance teams. Randolph's construction loan was entering final default, with foreclosure proceedings starting in 72 hours. Their business was collapsing, their personal assets were frozen under federal investigation, and their only escape was stealing enough homes through the fake auction to cover their debts. Computer monitoring revealed Priscilla's online searches, fleeing federal prosecution, countries without extradition, and emergency international travel. She was planning to run with whatever money she could steal from Friday's fake auction, but she'd made one fatal miscalculation. You can't outrun federal charges when every escape route is being monitored by the FBI agent you tried to terrorize. The end game was 72 hours away, and Priscilla's desperation was about to detonate her entire criminal empire. Thursday morning brought Priscilla's final desperate gambit, the fake auction advertisement that would seal her federal conviction. The legal notice appeared in the Denver Post classified section. Sheriff's sale, 1247 Elm Street. HOA foreclosure, cash only, Friday 10 a.m. courthouse steps. But she didn't stop there. A Facebook event exploded across local real estate groups. Public auction, luxury home below market value, bring cash, quick sale. The post included photos of my house, fake legal documentation, and promises of significant investment opportunity for qualified buyers. I watched the social media engagement from my home office, coffee growing cold as I counted the responses. 37 people clicked interested, 12 confirmed attendance, and 3 out-of-state investors requested additional property details. Each online interaction was creating federal wire fraud charges across state lines. The smell of printer ink filled my garage as I prepared evidence packets. Every fake document, every fraudulent posting, every criminal transaction documented with FBI precision. The evidence boxes were stacking up like Christmas presents for federal prosecutors. But Priscilla's recruitment drive revealed the full scope of her desperation. She wasn't just staging a fake auction, she was actively defrauding legitimate real estate investors. Phone recordings captured her taking $5,000 registration fees from 3 actual bidders, promising them first access to my distressed property sale. Wire fraud escalated to racketeering when those registration fees crossed state lines via electronic transfer. Interstate commerce violations added another layer of federal charges carrying mandatory minimum sentences. Meanwhile, my family protection protocols went into overdrive. Sarah and the twins relocated to an FBI safe house for the final 48 hours, officially listed as out-of-town family emergency, if anyone asked. A decoy agent in a similar vehicle maintained normal routines at my house, creating the illusion that life continued normally while federal teams prepared for Friday's takedown. The sound of our empty house echoing with each footstep reminded me why this mattered. These criminals had driven my family into hiding to steal our home through fabricated legal documents. Federal agency coordination reached military precision. IRS criminal investigation agents posed as potential bidders to document tax fraud in real time. Postal inspectors monitored ongoing mail fraud as fake legal notices continued arriving through USPS. Local sheriff's department coordinated perimeter security to prevent civilian interference with the federal operation. FBI SWAT teams positioned around the courthouse, ready if Priscilla's desperation turned violent. Radio chatter filled the surveillance van as multiple agencies synchronized their final preparations. But the media trap was the most elegant piece of the operation. Channel 7's Maria Sanchez positioned hidden cameras at strategic courthouse angles. Community organizers prepared to live stream the entire fraud as it unfolded, creating real-time evidence that defense attorneys couldn't challenge or claim was edited. Social media strategy activated with hashtag fake HOA busted ready to trend nationally. Every smartphone in our neighborhood was programmed with backup recording apps, creating multiple redundant evidence streams. Priscilla's final preparations revealed her complete disconnection from reality. She rented professional auctioneer equipment, microphone, podium, official-looking banners from a legitimate company using forged business credentials. The rental agreement alone constituted another federal fraud charge. Her security briefing with Randolph, captured through surveillance audio, showed their criminal delusion. If the federal agent tries to interfere, we have legal authority to have him arrested for disrupting a lawful foreclosure sale. They actually believed their fake documents gave them real legal power. 15 months of getting away with fraud had created a dangerous fantasy that they were legitimate authority figures rather than common criminals. The psychological profile our behavioral analysts created painted a perfect picture of criminal narcissism approaching complete collapse. Sleep deprivation, financial pressure, and escalating legal exposure had pushed Priscilla beyond rational decision-making into desperate criminality. Multiple neighbors reported her driving past their houses at all hours, talking to herself in her car, showing classic signs of criminal operation stress. Security cameras captured her practicing auction speeches in empty parking lots, rehearsing the performance that would send her to federal prison. Meanwhile, the real estate fraud reached peak absurdity. My house appeared on legitimate websites without permission. Motivated seller, federal agent relocating immediately, all offers considered. Multiple realtors called asking about showings, confused by the conflicting information between auction notices and sale listings. Each fraudulent posting created additional federal charges across state lines. Priscilla's desperation was manufacturing evidence faster than we could document it. But bank surveillance revealed the true source of her panic. Randolph's construction company faced final foreclosure Friday afternoon, the same day as the fake auction. Their business loan default would trigger personal bankruptcy unless they stole enough money from fraudulent home sales to cover their debts. Computer monitoring showed Priscilla's final preparations, online searches for emergency international flights, countries without U.S. extradition, and converting large cash amounts to foreign currency. Her laptop browser history read like a fugitive's escape manual. The 24-hour countdown had begun. Weather forecasts showed clear skies for optimal video documentation. Federal arrest teams were briefed on Priscilla's psychological profile and potential for violent desperation. Our neighborhood maintained disciplined silence despite the tension. Children and elderly residents were safely positioned away from the courthouse area. Emergency contacts were activated and backup communication systems tested. Tomorrow morning, Priscilla's greed would finally destroy her criminal empire in front of witnesses, cameras, and federal agents. The perfect storm was 12 hours away. Friday morning, 9:47 a.m. County courthouse steps buzzing with the nervous energy of a crowd sensing something historic was about to unfold. Priscilla arrived in her white BMW like some demented queen making a royal entrance. Professional auctioneer banners stretched across a folding table, fake legal documents arranged for maximum visual impact. She wore a navy business suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, all purchased with our stolen HOA dues. The crowd was perfect. 37 bidders, including undercover FBI agents, genuinely confused real estate investors, and our neighborhood witnesses positioned throughout the courthouse plaza. Maria Sanchez's camera crew set up behind concrete planters, officially covering a routine foreclosure sale for the evening news. At exactly 10 a.m., Priscilla took her position behind the borrowed auctioneer podium, fake legal documents displayed like trophies. The morning sun caught the laminated finish on her forged foreclosure notice as she tapped the microphone for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, by authority of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association, I'm authorized to conduct the foreclosure sale of property located at 1247 Elm Street. Her voice carried across the courthouse plaza with practiced authority, but I could hear the slight tremor underneath. 15 months of fraud had led to this moment, and somewhere deep down she knew she was walking into a trap. Maria Sanchez approached with a microphone, playing the curious reporter perfectly. "Ma'am, can you explain the legal basis for this foreclosure? Do you personally own this property?" Priscilla's response was everything we'd hoped for. "I have full legal authority under HOA enforcement powers granted by community covenant. Federal agents can't hide behind badges when they violate legitimate community standards." The crowd stirred. Several people looked confused. A few started whispering, but Priscilla continued, her ego completely overriding any survival instinct. "This property owner has accumulated over $47,000 in legitimate HOA violations and refuses to comply with lawful community requirements. Today's sale will transfer ownership to buyers who respect traditional neighborhood values." That's when I made my entrance. I walked slowly through the crowd from the courthouse building, FBI credentials visible in my hand, federal arrest warrant folded neatly in my jacket pocket. The crowd parted naturally, smartphones appearing like flowers blooming in spring sunlight. Priscilla spotted me halfway through her pitch, her professional composure cracking like ice under pressure. She tried to continue. "We'll start bidding at $30,000 for this fully equipped luxury." "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the plaza, "let's talk about what you're really selling here." I stepped forward, displaying my FBI credentials for the crowd and cameras. "I'm Agent Ethan Delacroix, and that's my house you're attempting to auction. The same house I own free and clear, with no mortgage, no liens, and absolutely no legal connection to any homeowners association." Priscilla's face went pale, but she doubled down. "This is a legitimate foreclosure sale authorized by..." "Authorized by what?" I pulled out the anti-HOA covenant, holding it high enough for cameras to capture. "By this legal document that specifically prohibits any HOA from ever being established in Willowbrook Estates. The same document recorded in county records that makes your entire operation legally impossible." The county clerk chose that perfect moment to emerge from the courthouse as we'd arranged. "Excuse me," she announced loudly. "There are no legal foreclosure proceedings scheduled for 1247 Elm Street. This property has no liens, no judgments, and no lawful basis for any foreclosure sale." Priscilla tried to flee, gathering her fake documents like a gambler scooping up cards from a losing hand, but FBI agents materialized from the crowd, badges appearing from behind newspapers, coffee cups, and casual conversations. "Priscilla Blackthorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, impersonation of federal officials, and operating a criminal enterprise under RICO statutes." The Miranda rights echoed off courthouse stone walls as handcuffs clicked into place. Randolph's attempted escape in their BMW was blocked by additional agents who'd been waiting in the parking garage. But the most satisfying moment came when Agent Martinez opened the evidence boxes right there on the courthouse steps. Bankers' boxes full of fake HOA documents, fraudulent liens, threatening recordings, and financial records documenting $230,000 in systematic theft. Dolores stepped forward from the crowd, clutching her stack of fake citations. $47,000 in fraudulent fines for planting roses instead of approved shrubs. Bill appeared next, displaying his collection of violations. $7,800 for flying an American flag in my own yard. Jenny and Tom emerged holding their baby, voices shaking with emotion. $15,000 in fake debt that almost cost us our home. The crowd erupted in applause as the scope of the fraud became clear. Maria Sanchez's live broadcast captured every word as our neighbors stepped forward with evidence packets, creating a mountain of community testimony that would bury Priscilla's criminal enterprise forever. "How did you stay so calm during months of harassment?" Maria asked, shoving the microphone toward me. I looked directly into the camera, thinking of every family she'd terrorized, every elderly neighbor she'd frightened, every dream she'd tried to steal. 20 years investigating white-collar crime teaches patience. Besides, I held up the anti-HOA covenant one final time. Sometimes the best defense is just reading the fine print. The crowd's laughter mixed with Priscilla's sobs as federal agents led her away in handcuffs, her criminal empire destroyed by the very greed that had built it. The jail cell doors closed on Priscilla and Randolph with the most satisfying sound I'd heard in months. Metallic finality echoing through courthouse basement holding cells. But the real justice was just beginning. Within hours, federal asset forfeiture teams descended on the Blackthorn properties like financial vultures. The BMW, the vacation homes, the jewelry collection, everything purchased with stolen HOA dues was tagged, photographed, and seized for victim restitution. Watching them inventory Priscilla's luxury lifestyle built on our neighbors' suffering felt like Christmas morning for law enforcement. That evening, we held our first truly free neighborhood gathering in Ethan's backyard. Dolores organized a potluck dinner that actually felt like celebrating instead of planning resistance. The warm scent of barbecue mixing with blooming jasmine reminded everyone what peace smelled like. Bill led a flag ceremony honoring neighborhood veterans, his small American flag finally flying without fear of fake citations. 27 years defending freedom overseas, he said, voice thick with emotion. But I never thought I'd have to defend it in my own neighborhood. The financial recovery exceeded everyone's hopes. Federal Asset Forfeiture Court awarded the full $230,000 to affected families, plus additional damages for credit repair and emotional distress. Jenny and Tom used their recovery money for a down payment on a larger house in the same neighborhood because now it was truly safe. 6 months later, the legal resolution was complete. Priscilla pleaded guilty to 23 federal charges, receiving 8 years in federal prison with no possibility of early release. Randolph got 5 years plus complete business asset forfeiture. The federal judge added an additional $500,000 in penalties for systematic targeting of a federal agent and his family. But the real victory was the legal precedent established. Federal courts ruled that anti-HOA covenants are enforceable under federal property law, creating nationwide protection for homeowners against similar fraud schemes. Our case became required reading at FBI training academies for financial crimes investigators. The community transformation was magical. Willowbrook Estates became a model neighborhood for property rights advocacy. I started monthly constitution and property rights workshops in our community center, teaching homeowners how to identify and report housing fraud. Attendance grew from 12 neighbors to over 200 people from surrounding communities. Dolores converted the former Blackthorn Company office into a community garden where neighbors grow vegetables and children learn about soil, seasons, and the simple freedom to plant whatever they want without permission. The garden's sign reads, Willowbrook Freedom Garden, where communities grow without HOAs. Our story went viral in ways that mattered. The original news broadcast earned 2.3 million views online, sparking a congressional hearing on fake HOA fraud targeting federal employees. FBI investigations discovered 12 similar schemes nationwide, leading to 47 additional arrests and millions in recovered stolen funds. The ripple effects continue spreading. I testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee about housing fraud, leading to new federal legislation protecting homebuyers from fake HOA scams. My YouTube channel, Know Your Rights Property Edition, has helped thousands of homeowners identify and report housing corruption. But the most meaningful outcome was establishing the Willowbrook Freedom Foundation, an annual scholarship for children whose families survived housing fraud schemes. The $50,000 endowment, funded by federal asset forfeiture recovery, provides college assistance to kids who grew up watching their parents fight corrupt systems. Our first scholarship recipient was Jenny and Tom's daughter, now 5 years old, with a college fund ensuring she'll grow up in a truly free community where neighbors support each other instead of terrorizing each other. Every summer, we host Freedom Day Festival on the anniversary of Priscilla's arrest. Local bands, food trucks, constitutional law information booths, and children's activities including Spot the Fake Badge, educational games. Bill organizes veteran honor guards for the flag ceremony, while Dolores coordinates community garden tours. The festival draws thousands of visitors who want to see how neighbors can defeat corruption through organization, evidence, and refusing to surrender to bullies with fake authority. This Christmas morning, I'm drinking coffee on my front porch, watching Emma and Sophie play in our yard without fear of citations or harassment. Dolores waves from her garden where roses bloom freely. Bill raises his coffee mug in our daily salute from across the street. The sweet sound of suburban peace has returned. Children laughing, lawnmowers humming, neighbors chatting over fences about weather and schools instead of fake fines and fraudulent liens. Sometimes the job follows you home. This time, I'm grateful it did.
Here's the part that keeps eating at me. Ethan spent 6 months building a federal case while his neighbors suffered in silence. Dolores paid $4,000 for planting roses. Bill got fined for flying an American flag. Jenny and Tom nearly lost their house. All of that pain could have ended with a single phone call to the county's clerk's office. The anti-HOA covenant was public record. Anyone could have found it. But nobody looked, because we're trained to assume that official-looking documents mean official. We see letterhead and signatures and we think, this must be legal. Ethan has FBI training, sure, but his real superpower was something any of us can develop. The refusal to be intimidated by people with fake credentials. Priscilla counted on one thing, that her victims would pay rather than investigate. She bet that busy parents and elderly retirees wouldn't spend their Saturday morning at the courthouse checking property records. For 18 months, that bet paid off, until it met someone who called her bluff. So here's my question. What authority figures in your life have you never actually fact-checked? Your HOA board? Property management company? Drop a story below and hit subscribe, because sometimes the most radical act is simply asking, says who?